My name is Daniel Carter, and I was 27 years old when my entire family decided I was invisible. I grew up in a quiet town in Ohio, in a small house that my grandfather, William Carter, had built with his own hands after returning from the war. He was the only person in my family who ever believed in me. While everyone else treated me like a burden, he treated me like his legacy. From childhood, he taught me values, honesty, and patience. When my parents were too busy fighting over money and status, he was the one who sat beside me every evening, helping me with homework and listening to my dreams. He used to say, "Daniel, one day, people will try to take what's yours, but if you stay honest, the truth will protect you." After I finished college, I moved back home to take care of him. His health was failing, and my parents and siblings had already emotionally abandoned him. They only visited when they needed money. My older brother, Mark, was obsessed with luxury. My sister, Rachel, cared only about social media and appearances. My parents pretended to care, but behind closed doors, they discussed inheritance like hungry wolves. I was the only one who stayed with Grandpa in the hospital, who fed him, who held his hand at night when he couldn't sleep. 3 months before he passed away, he called me into his room. His voice was weak, but his eyes were sharp. He told me he had updated his will and placed it with his lawyer. He said, "Daniel, I've seen everything. I know who deserves what. Don't let anyone scare you." I didn't understand his words fully at that time. I thought he was just emotional. When he passed away, the house felt empty. No laughter, no warmth, only tension. At the funeral, my family cried in front of people, but the moment we were alone, their faces changed. They started whispering about property, savings, investments, and business shares. Not once did they ask how I was feeling. Not once did they thank me for taking care of him. A week later, we gathered at home. My uncle announced that the executor of the will, Mr. Thompson, Grandpa's lawyer, was on vacation abroad and would return in 2 weeks. Until then, nothing could be officially decided. That's when everything changed. My parents suddenly became kind. My brother offered me coffee. My sister started calling me dear. But I could feel something was wrong. Behind their smiles was greed. 2 days later, I came home from work and found my room empty. My clothes were gone. My books were gone. Even my laptop was missing. My mother stood in the living room and said coldly, "You should move out. This house belongs to us now." I was shocked. "But Grandpa—" My father interrupted. "Stop acting innocent. We know he left everything to the family. You were just a helper." Mark smirked. "Don't worry, little brother. We'll give you something maybe." They had already divided everything in their minds. They locked me out of my own home. That night, I slept in my car. And that was only the beginning of their betrayal. For the next 2 weeks, I lived like a stranger in my own life, sleeping in my old car behind a grocery store, showering at a friend's place, and eating cheap sandwiches just to survive. Every night, I kept hearing Grandpa's voice in my head. "Don't let anyone scare you." But fear had already wrapped itself around me, not because of money, because my own blood had erased me without hesitation. I tried calling my parents. They blocked me. I messaged my sister. She left me on read. When I went back to the house to collect my remaining things, the locks had been changed. A "for sale" sign stood proudly in front of the lawn. My heart dropped. They were selling Grandpa's house. Without permission. Without waiting for the will. I confronted Mark at his office. He leaned back in his leather chair like a king who had already won. "Relax, Daniel," he said. "We're just being practical. The lawyer isn't even here. We're the family. We decide." "You're committing fraud," I whispered. He laughed. "Who's going to believe you? You're homeless." Those words crushed me more than any slap. A week later, I found out they had accessed Grandpa's safe. They took his documents, bank statements, old letters, everything. My cousins secretly sent me pictures. They were forging signatures, editing papers, creating fake agreements. They were stealing my life. One night, my aunt called me quietly. "Daniel, your mother is transferring money from your grandfather's account. Millions. She says you don't deserve anything." I couldn't breathe. I contacted Mr. Thompson's office, but his assistant said he was unreachable on vacation in Europe. No email, no phone. They knew this. That's why they were moving fast. They sold one rental property. They withdrew savings. They emptied investment accounts. All in 2 weeks. Meanwhile, they posted smiling photos online, pretending to mourn. I worked overtime at a warehouse to survive. My hands were bleeding. My back ached. But every night I saved screenshots, receipts, bank alerts, anything I could find. I became my own investigator. Then something unexpected happened. One evening, while cleaning Grandpa's old toolbox that I had saved, I found a hidden envelope behind a false panel. Inside was a handwritten letter. Daniel, if you're reading this, it means I was right to worry. Trust the executor. Trust the second file. It's hidden in my lawyer's office. My heart started racing. Second file. I immediately went to Mr. Thompson's office. His secretary hesitated but finally checked. There was a sealed folder. Labeled, Confidential, William Carter. She wasn't allowed to open it. Only he was. And he was coming back in 3 days. 3 days. That was all that stood between justice and disaster. Meanwhile, my family sensed something. They suddenly started calling. My mother cried on the phone. My father apologized. My sister invited me for dinner. Fake. All fake. They were afraid. Because deep down, they knew. The truth was coming. The 3 days before Mr. Thompson's return felt longer than the 3 hardest years of my life. Every hour, I checked my phone. Every minute, I imagined what my family was planning behind my back. They had already stolen so much money, property, dignity, that I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to destroy the last proof of Grandpa's wishes. On the morning of his return, I stood outside his office building 2 hours early. My hands were shaking, not from cold, but from fear and hope fighting inside me. When his black sedan finally stopped in front of the building, I felt like my future had arrived with it. Mr. Thompson stepped out, calm and professional, carrying a leather briefcase. "Daniel," he asked. I nodded. "You look exhausted," he said gently. "Come inside." Inside his office, I told him everything. About being kicked out. About forged papers. About stolen money. About the house being sold. He listened without interrupting. His face grew darker with every sentence. When I finished, he opened his drawer and pulled out the sealed folder. "This," he said, "is what your grandfather trusted me with most." He opened it. Inside were original wills, video recordings, bank instructions, legal safeguards, and notarized statements. My grandfather had planned everything. There was a video. We watched it. Grandpa appeared on screen, weak but strong in spirit. "Daniel," he said, "if you're watching this, it means my family tried to cheat you. I'm sorry, I saw it coming. That's why everything belongs to you. Every property, every account, every investment. You earned it with loyalty." Tears rolled down my face. Mr. Thompson paused the video. "They're finished," he said quietly. That same day, he froze all accounts. He canceled property transfers. He contacted federal investigators. 2 days later, my family received court notices. Panic exploded. My phone started ringing nonstop. My mother begged. My father threatened. My brother cursed. My sister cried. I ignored all of it. The court hearing was scheduled for the following week. When we entered the courtroom, my family sat together, nervous, pale, whispering. They didn't look powerful anymore. They looked guilty. The judge listened patiently as Mr. Thompson presented everything. Videos, documents, forgery reports, bank records. My brother tried to interrupt. The judge shut him down. My mother fainted. My father stared at the floor. Then the judge spoke. All fraudulent transfers are void. All assets return to Daniel Carter. Charges will be reviewed. Silence. Then chaos. My family lost everything. Their lies were exposed. Their greed destroyed them. After the hearing, Mark ran toward me. Please help us, he whispered. I looked at him, and for the first time, I felt nothing. After the courtroom emptied, I stayed behind for a few minutes, sitting quietly on the wooden bench where my grandfather's fate and mine had been decided. The noise, the shouting, the tears, the accusations, everything felt distant now, like a storm that had finally passed. For years, I had imagined this moment. I thought I would feel victory. I thought I would feel satisfaction. But what I felt instead was peace. Grandpa had been right. The truth had protected me. In the weeks that followed, I slowly rebuilt my life. I moved back into the old house, not as an owner filled with pride, but as a guardian of memories. Every room still carried his presence. The smell of old books, the creaking stairs, the wooden porch where he once told me stories. I renovated carefully, keeping everything the way he loved it. The house wasn't just property. It was a symbol of loyalty, patience, and love. I hired professional auditors to restore every damaged account. I recovered most of the stolen funds. Some money was gone forever, but I didn't chase it. What mattered more was honoring Grandpa's vision. He had always wanted to support education, healthcare, and struggling families. So I created the William Carter Foundation, offering scholarships to students who came from broken homes, kids who felt invisible, just like I once did. Meanwhile, my family's world collapsed. Mark lost his job. Rachel disappeared from social media. My parents sold their cars and moved into a small apartment. They stopped being important. They became ordinary. One evening, 6 months later, my mother stood at my door. She looked smaller, older, broken. I'm sorry, she whispered. We were blind. I invited her in. We talked for hours. Not about money. About mistakes. About fear. About regret. I didn't give them back the inheritance, but I gave them something better. Forgiveness. I paid their rent quietly. I helped them get medical insurance. No announcements. No conditions. Just humanity. Because Grandpa had taught me that real wealth isn't what you own. It's who you remain. Years later, I stood at his grave with fresh flowers. I kept my promise, I said softly. The wind moved through the trees. And for the first time, I knew he was proud.